right into this UFC Vegas 56. Aaron Blanchfield has to be one of the biggest prospects in the entire flyweight division. He's only 23 years old. Fights out of Renzo Gracie Philly, which has yet to lose in the UFC in 2022. I think 8 people have fought. All 8 have won. Hands down, probably the clear candidate for Gym of the Year so far. She's 2-0 inside the UFC, has yet to lose a round, in my opinion. She's a dominant grappler, has had almost 10 minutes and 12 minutes of control time in her first 2 fights. She's taken on UFC veteran JJ Olive, who's 4-1 in her last 5. Looked absolutely stellar. She was a striker with a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo, moved over to Elevation Fight Team in 2020, has gone 3-1. Her cardio's look great. She even started to involve her game a little bit. She's got a pretty decent ground game now, gets more takedowns since moving over there than she did in her first 7 UFC fights. That being said, I think I got Blanchfield all day in this fight. It's just not really too good of a matchup for JJ Oliver. So I'm going to go Blanchfield. Dan's going to also go Blanchfield. We're going to move right into the next one. Renato Fakhretdimov versus Andre Michailidis. Jesus, it's a mouthful. Andre Michailidis has been on the bad side of some pretty brutal KOs to start his UFC career. He shot him for a takedown with 10 seconds left in the first round against Modestas Bukauskas, and Bukauskas landed some heavy elbows, kind of close to the back of the head, but they were clean, but borderline. And he wasn't able. The round ended, and he quit in between round space, or the ref called it off. Then his last time out, he got flying knee KO'd by Alex Pereira, and the one time he looked good was against KB Bular, who has to be one of the worst middleweights in the entire UFC. But he will be trying his luck at welterweight in this one, which I think is a good place for him. He wasn't the biggest middleweight in the world. He's taken on Renato Fakhretdimov. He has he was on Dana White's looking for a fight. Dana went and sat down with Khabib at UAE over in Abu Dhabi, and he KO'd Eric Spicely in 55 seconds. He has a 20-2 record and has won 14 in a row, 12 of those by finish. He's definitely a better grappler. Does have a nice jab, heavy low kicks. But once he gets a hold of you, you're going for a ride. He's got some explosive power. I expect to see some slams, smothering ground and pound. And again, yeah, I got Renat all day in this one. So, and I'm pretty sure Dan does too. And we're going to move right into the next one. Jeff Molina versus Zhalgas Samuyalov. This one of those fights where you just don't want to see either one of these guys lose. I'm going to start with Jeff Molina. Only made his UFC debut back in 2021 after a fought in the Contender Series. He's gone 2-0 inside the UFC, showcasing high, fast-paced striking, not to mention some pretty powerful punching for a 125er, but he does struggle with the takedowns a bit. Very good at getting back to his feet, and I really think he's the future of the flyweight division. He's taking on Zhalgas Samuyalov, who's 1-3 in the UFC. He actually has Zhalgas has been thrown to the wolves, taking on some pretty high competition to start his UFC career. He's fights with a lot of forward pressure. His reach is a little troubling, and he already has pretty short arms, and he throws a lot of looping punches. So like, he just really doesn't connect too much. He is one of those guys that uses a lot of control time on the fence too. I really liked his game when he first joined the UFC, but I've kind of soured on him a little bit. Just too many holes for me to pick him. So I'm going to go with Jeff Molina in this one. And we're going to move right into the next one. Tony Gravely versus Johnny Munoz Jr. I don't know about at like what the fan base thinks of Tony Gravely, but I'm actually a pretty big fan of his. A lot of people don't like that grappling game, like the Marab type fights, but I'm a fan of it. The guy has a pretty fast-paced, relentless grappling, being a former Division I wrestler, averages 6.8 takedowns for 55% accuracy. Although his striking is not his best, his striking is his best suit. He does have a black belt in Taekwondo. And the guy has fought elite competition throughout his entire career, fighting Pat Sabatini in his second pro fight ever back in 2015. Then in 2016, he fought 8 times, fighting Merab Davishvili. Then in his next fight, 5 months later, fighting Manny Bermudez. And his only 2 UFC losses have come from Nate Maness and Brett Johns. And Manus has a win over Munoz in his UFC debut, where Munoz had the control time, but Manus outstruck him from bottom position. So that's a pretty good thing to look at for this one. Common opponent in Nate Manus. Munoz is only 1-1 so far in the UFC, in my opinion. I think he beat Manus, which in a UFC debut is that very tough fight. I give him a lot of respect for that. He's a grappler, but comes from a BJJ background, holds a black belt. He's finished 9 of his 11 wins, mostly by sub. The competition he's faced is a drop of a bucket compared to Gravely, frankly. Really can't even compare the two. This one's close, but I think Gravely is the better grappler of the two. Slight edge to Munoz on the feet, but I don't think it's going to be on the feet for long. So I'm going to go with Tony Gravely in this one. All right, the next one, Benoit Saint-Denis versus Nicholas Stoltz. This fight's pretty interesting. Both guys were former welterweights, little undersized. They both decided to go down to 155. Benoit's more of like a smaller, stocky guy. Nicholas Stoltz is longer, lanky guy. You don't really see UFC matchmaking debut fighters in weight class changes, but I think it actually is a pretty good idea. Benoit Saint-Denis was badly beaten his last time out versus against Zaleski dos Santos in Abu Dhabi. They used like some local judges there, and this guy was just not qualified. He almost killed Saint Denis. He ended up taking a hell of a beat down. But that being said, though, he did take the fight on 7-day notice, which, gets some respect. Very grappling heavy game. His footwork for his striking wasn't great in that fight. Pretty stagnant on the feet. Just couldn't get anything really going. Went 2 for 14 for takedowns. He's taken on Nicholas Stoltz, who's winless 0-2 so far in the UFC. He's making his, if he's able to make his mark for 155, I think he's going to be a massive 155er. That being said, hasn't showed us really any of his skills so far in the UFC, losing one sidely in both of his UFC fights. I know he's really motivated for his fight. He knows his job is on the line. He's also made a few changes, and now he's with Syndicate and MMA now. So I think I actually am going to go with the underdog and Nick Stoltz in this one. But this one has a lot of question marks and pretty sketchy to bet. So I don't know if I would actually recommend even doing that. But I like the underdog. We're going to move right into the next one. Damon Jackson versus Daniel Argenta. I'm not going to lie. I was a Damon Jackson doubter. I took one look at that guy's hairline and I was like, oh, there's no shot. But he was cut from the UFC back in 2016, going 0-2-1, failing a drug test. Then he moved to Fortis MMA in 2017, and in 2020 during COVID, they gave him another shot. Since then, he's gone 3-1, 2 subs. His only loss from Ilya Topuria. He's a lifelong wrestler, BJJ purple belt. His striking is kind of questionable. He's taken on UFC newcomer Daniel Argenta, who has an 8-0 record, was on tough, lost in the first round to Ricky Tercios. Then went on a 3-fight winning streak in the LFA. Just took this fight last week at a higher weight class after Derek Minor got a concussion, who was supposed to face Damon Jackson. Argenta is young, decent prospect, but short notice, higher weight class with a matchup against a wrestler. I expect Damon Jackson being a little heavier to really play a part in this. So I'm going to go with Damon Jackson. And I think he's like at like a minus 500 right now. So the odds makers are saying that same thing too. So we're going to move right into the next one. Joe Solecki versus Alex De Silva. 4-1. Joe Solecki is under UFC umbrella. Had a tough time in his last time out against Jared Gordon. Gordon was able to stop Solecki's grappling after Solecki was out of the first round, noticeably slowed down, and he just started to piece him up on the feet. But I think he'll have a lot easier time matching up with Alex De Silva in this. Both guys are very similar. They're strong suits, submission grappling, but they aren't the best at striking. De Silva is 1-2 so far in the UFC. He hasn't fought in nearly 2 years. He's coming off a very well-aged loss to Brad Riddell, and he did take the first round, but ending up losing the next 2. And like Solecki, slowed down as the fight went on. So the guys actually they have very similar games. I see these guys' grappling games evening each other out. I'm going to go with the better striker of the two. I think that's the guy who put up a decent battle against a very high-level guy in Brad Riddell. So I'm actually going to go with Alex De Silva in this one. Okay, we're going to move right into the next one. Felice Herrig versus Carolina Kowalkiewicz 2. This fight is crazy. not in the sense that I'm really excited for it. It's just crazy that it's even a fight on a card. That's how embarrassingly bad it is. These girls have a combined 2 wins over the last 5 fights. So 10 fights, they have 2 total wins, and both belong to Felice Herrig, who actually hasn't fought since 2020. So she's taken a 2 year layoff. Coming off a first round sub loss to Vina Janaroba in under 2 minutes of the first round. She was pretty well rounded, but not good anywhere. Jack of all trades, master of none type, but someone with one fight over the span of nearly 4 years and on a 3 fight losing skid, it's just not a good look for anyone. You would think, wow, this is a real shoe in for whoever Felice Herrig is fighting, but surprisingly, it's actually, or embarrassingly, is actually pretty close. Cole Kwich 0-5 in her last 5, but pretty much overall top level competition. A KO loss from Jessica Andrade, a loss to Michelle Watterson, who was on a 3 fight winning streak at the time, then back to back beatdowns from Alexa Grasso and Yan Xiaonan, and a first round submission loss from Jessica Pena. Um, Absolutely brutal. But the last time she had a win was 2018 in a split decision over Felice Herrig. So, yeah, I guess this fight kind of makes sense. This one's tough. I think I'm going to go with Koval Kwich. Last time we saw Felice Herrig uh, was after a 2 year layoff, and she just looked like she didn't belong. Now, another 2 year layoff. I think she's going to look even worse. So I'm going to go with the more active girl who got the win in the last fight. So I'm going to go with Carolina Kowalkiewicz. And we're going to move right into the next one. Alonzo Meadowfield versus Askar Mozarov. Meadowfield came into the UFC red hot, 4 straight KO wins, 2 on the Contender Series, 2 in the UFC, including a win and performance of the night award over Paul Craig, who's now like currently I think top 8 ranked fighter in the light heavyweight division. And since then has gone 2-3. He has some pretty good Muay Thai, but has some good grappling too. Was able to out wrestle Devin Clark and William Knight, although he has been knocked down 2 times in his last 4 fights. I think that probably has something to do with the weight cut. He's a pretty big dude, and hasn't landed any over those fights either. So he's just been knocked down twice, landing none. I feel like he's kind of reached the level of competition where he belongs in the UFC right now. He's taken on Askar Mozarov, who's making his UFC debut, and there's a lot of question marks around this guy. For one, every like record source I checked has a different pro record: 25-7, 21-11. So I'm going to use the Tapologies like I use for everything, and that one is the 21-11 stats. And all 11 of those losses were finishes, 8 of those by submission, all but one of those fights actually leaving the first round. That being said, he's finished 12 of 21 wins, with a very large percentage of those inside of the first round. I'm going to have to take the proven guy with UFC experience, well-rounded game in Meadowfield in this one. But this one's kind of tough. Yeah, that one's pretty sketchy. Good move right into the next one. Oday Osbourne versus Saruk Adashev. Adashev was a pro kickboxer, 16-3 record, made his UFC debut with only a 13-1 record, and since went 1-3 and now stands at a 4-3 pro record. He's finally seemed to put the pieces together in his last time out, although he was knocked down in the first round, wasn't looking good in the second, but overall, he's a very well-rounded guy. Besides kickboxing, he's got a combat sambo background as well. He's taken on Oday Osbourne, 3-2 under the UFC umbrella. He's a very hard-hitting striker who's fundamentally sound, has a 73-inch reach for a 125er, which is absolutely insane. And he'll really use that reach, pokes his jab out, really irritates wrestlers on the outside. He's only seen past the first round 4 times over the course of his 14-fight career, and did slow in the third when he went to decision in his last time out. This is another close one. I think I'm going to go with Saruk Adashev in this one, ever so slightly. And we're going to move right into the next one, Pauline Botello versus Corrine Silva. This fight did not deserve to be in the main event. I'd rather put Jeff Molina versus Algius or Aaron Blanchfield in here. But Pauline Botello, 3-3 so far in the UFC, currently riding a 2-fight losing streak, but did have a tough fought split decision against Lana Carolina in her last time out. Another jack of all trades, master of none type. I would say she's better at the striking, Muay Thai style, but I noticed that she does struggle when she faces tough grapplers. She's taken on Corrine Silva, who's making her UFC debut after overcoming adversity in her Contender Series fight, getting control for 4 minutes of the first round before landing a sub halfway through the second. She's got a 14-4 record, is on a 5-fight winning streak, and she is a smothering grappler that finished all 14 of her fights, 8 by KO, 6 by sub. And she also fights out of well-known gym, Gil Roberto, alongside Rogerio Bonsarin, Vanderlei Silva, and Gusto Sakai. But the problem with her is she doesn't really pace herself. She does seem to go for the finish a lot, empty the gas tank in the first, which I am kind of worried about. But that being said, I think I'm going to go with the newcomer, Corrine Silva, in this one. And we're going to move right into the next one. Oh my God, this one is my stay away from for the night. I just can't trust Michael Trisano. Michael Trisano, he was on Tough 27, undefeated season where he ended up winning. He went 3-2 so far in the UFC, including a pretty big upset against Ludwig Klein. But honestly, I had the fight the other way, giving up 2 rounds to 1. And he had and he also had 2 losses to very good competition: Grant Dawson, Hakeem Dawodu. Not to mention, started his UFC career with 2 split decision wins, which, yeah, we're very close. Could have gone either way. So basically, what we've seen from Michael Trizano, his fights are a flip of the coin, and he's taken on UFC newcomer Lucas Almeida, who has a 13-1 pro record, with that 1 lone loss coming from his Contender Series fight. He's finished all 13 of his wins, mostly by KO TKO. And another Muay Thai fighter. I really like how he works the body with his kicks, punches, but he also has a very good submission game and overall very well-rounded guy. I will say, though, he is cutting a little extra weight in this. He's a former 155er moving down to 145. I'm not sure how that weight cut will treat him, especially in a UFC debut. It could, something could go wrong. I'm not totally sold on Almeida, but I just cannot bet on Trizano. So I'm actually going to be taking Lucas Almeida in this. But this is my stay away from for the night for sure. Going to move right into the co-main event. Dan Ige, Movsar Evloev. Movsar Evloev has looked great so far in the UFC, 5-0 so far, all decisions. He's very well-rounded, master of sports in Greco-Roman wrestling, and some very technical Muay Thai. He's a former M1 fighter that started training with Tiger Muay Thai as well. I would say, which is kind of like a weird critique, I would say the one thing is he kicks a little too much in some situations. Like, he'll get lost in his kicks, in his feet, which is it's just like weird to hear. But go look at his stats. Like, he did just something that he does. I just would like to see more volume with his hands, because he does have very technically sound striking. And another thing is, which is a little bit bigger, is that he did slow down pretty good against that fight against Hakeem Dawodu. And it's not like he's had all one-sided decision wins. He had very close fights with Enrique Barzola and Nick Lentz. He's going to be taking on Dan Ige, 2-3 in his last 5, but he's fought real upper echelon of the 145-pound division. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, but both are to great competition. Korean Zombie, who's I think a top 5 gatekeeper at this point, Josh Emmett. But that Josh Emmett fight was razor thin, and if it wasn't for an early knockdown, I think, in my opinion, I think that Dan Ige would have won that fight. He has a background in multiple grappling disciplines, BJJ judo, NCAA wrestler, but he's also a very good kickboxer, and that's what we see him mostly do inside the cage, is on the feet, straight punches, powerful hands. Big difference maker here is that cardio, though. He's got some great cardio. Ige's takedown defense is going to be a point of attack. It's at 55% takedown defense, and Movsar Evloev averages 4 takedowns per fight and is very smothering in his grappling. So I would say, I think I am going to go, this one's so tough. Screw it. I'm going to take the underdog. I'm going to take Dan Ige, 50K. This is not a bad matchup for him. This is he's faced harder competition, I think, in a couple of his last losses than he has against Movsar Evloev. So I think this is a pretty good shot, and he needs to rebound bad. So I'm going to go with Dan Ige. Going to move right into the main event. Alexander Volkov versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I just don't understand how the Volkov hate. People say the guy slowed down. I totally and completely disagree. He's just not a top 3 guy anymore, where he was for so long. it's not that he's slowed down. I would like per se. I just think this game, like the game, has evolved really quickly in the past couple of years. But he's a veteran, 44 pro fights. He's only 33 years old. 34 wins, 22 by KO, plus 1.8 striking differential, 57% accuracy. He's a kickboxer. I know he lost to Cyril Gahn, but Gahn is a top 3 guy, and like three out of those 5 rounds were close. Volkov like could have gone either way, including that first round, which is clearly Volkov, and I think only one of the judges had it for Volkov, which was just judges just when it's a 5-round fight, they just forget about the early stuff. He's taken on Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's 2-3 in his last 5, also a kickboxer, about the same age, 34 years old. He's fought the best at heavyweight too. He has a lot less output in his striking. He has a negative striking differential with it too, and more going for KOs than to outpoint like Volkov would do. I'm slightly worried that this fight's going to be a total bummer, snooze fest, like a lot of these recent heavyweight main events. But overall, I am crossing my fingers. I'm hoping it's going to be a stand-up battle against these two, and I think Alexander Volkov will outpoint Rozenstruik, probably decision. He's not really getting too many finishes nowadays, but I think he'll take it into later rounds and be able to avoid Rozenstruik's heavy hits. And yeah, that's it. UFC Vegas 56, no-brainer MMA.